Sherlock Holmes The Awakened is the latest in a long-running series of games based on the famous detective by Ukrainian developer frogwares. I wasn't aware of the background of the game, but apparently the team had originally intended to work on another open-world title, which would have a significant development time commitment. When the war in Ukraine started early last year, the studio took the decision to pivot to a project more compact in scope with an exciting foundation. Welcome everyone. Today we will review Sherlock Holmes The Awakened. But before we start, make sure to subscribe to my channel for more gaming videos and reviews, and hit the like button, and let's get started. The Awakened is a remake of the 2007 PC game, which was the third game in frogwares series, and the first to feature a proper full 3D game world. It was also the first game to feature supernatural plot elements, as it delves into a Cthulhu mythos. Not only had I not played the original game, I had never played any of the series prior to starting The Awakened for this review. I was aware of them, but like all of us, with more games to play than time, I had never got round to trying any of them. The Awakened take place early in Sherlock's career, and at the point in time we meet them. Sherlock and Watson are only housemates, yet to form the bond they are famous for. Indeed, during the game we often get the opportunity to play as Watson, generally when his medical knowledge is called into action. The two become closer over the events of the game, more like the do we all know. As I have said, I hadn't played any of the previous Sherlock games, but of course I was familiar with the characters and aware of the world-famous detective. I had read a few of Arthur Conan Doyle's novels, although it has been a good few years since I did. So going into play The Awakened, I expected a detective adventure with lots of sleuthing and puzzle solving. This is more or less exactly what the game delivers. There is a sort of prologue chapter in The Awakened which introduces the player to the core investigation mechanics which they will use. Sherlock examines scenes in a manner not dissimilar to L.A. Noire, and while questioning and interrogating NPCs does take an important part. We don't see branching dialogues like Team Bundy's detective game. Two other important gameplay features are the Mind Palace and Imagination. The Mind Palace is where Sherlock deduces answers to questions pertinent to the investigation and had using the various type of evidence he currently possesses, while this can be solved using trial and error and a process of elimination. The game does reward the player answering the questions first time or a fewer attempts. Imagination is where Sherlock figures out what events has transpired in investigation scenes. This involves finding nodes and working out which of a number of alternate events happen and chaining these together to deduce the overall incident. Similarly to the Mind Palaces, this can be solved by brute force, but it is preferable to validate the correct sequence of events in as few a number of attempts as possible. The story starts off reasonably unlikely as Watson introduces Sherlock to informations of those servants have disappeared. This quickly turns into a kidnapping case, and the motivation for the kidnaps seems to be quite nefarious. The game is built using Unreal Engine 4 and looks reasonably good in most places. The first couple of chapters take place in Victorian London, and they look suitably gloomy. As the story unfolds, Holmes and Watson venture further afield to a mental asylum in Switzerland and New Orleans and its surrounding bayou. The visual contrast when we arrive in New Orleans as stark as here we encounter bright sunshine and colorful views. The different levels are semi-open world. Each area is open and let you go wherever you like, but they are relatively small and self-contained. The character models are generally fine, both NPCs and Holmes and Watson. For a game like this though, which is more about putting pieces of puzzles together and solving mysteries, I am absolutely okay with functional but not particularly impressive visuals. The only particular criticism I have is that there is a frequent noticeable pop in with background and environmental details. Like the visuals, the audio of the game is decent, acceptable while never especially impressive. The voice acting of Holmes and Watson does its job perfectly well, and the NPCs all sounds appropriate to their character and situations. Again, I only really have one complaint. When trying to find info by talking to NPCs, and negative responses are all very generic and repetitive. It would have been nice if the team could have recorded a few more variations to the stock.
First, we shall rest when our investigation is over, and not a moment sooner. I shall ask you to handle our bags while I search for the bank.
As you wish.
I don't know anything about the type responses, but this is a Sherlock Holmes game, and it's ultimately all about the great detective. The Awakened is split into discrete chapters, but they are form a large narrative arc. I really enjoy how ostensibly straightforward missing person investigation gradually turned into something far more sinister. As noted, the original game was the first in frogwares Sherlock series to incorporate plot elements which went beyond the natural into a horror arena. This remake of course retains this aspect. As Holmes and Watson attempt to track down a missing servant, they get pulled into a Lovecraftian scams. Overall, the plot is well written and draws the player in. There was only one development which I found a little jarring. I wouldn't elaborate for avoidance of spoilers. The Lovecraft elements are well incorporated and don't feel out of place, and the story ultimately reaches a fitting conclusion. Sherlock Holmes The Awakened is a thoroughly enjoyable detective adventure, which is well written and explores some dark themes. The gameplay, mostly notable the absence of action, will not be to every player's test, but for those who appreciate this style, it will deliver an exceptional, rewarding experience. My rating for this game is 7 out of 10. Thank you for watching, guys. Please subscribe in my channel for more videos. See you next time. Peace.